My fiancé laughed in my face after I made him a home-cooked dinner for the first time, then told me, "You'll improve when you're a wife." When I tried to stand up for myself, my mom barged in and said, "Do you know what your father did when I cooked him a meal he didn't like? He threw the plate across the room." I stayed silent. That was 3 months ago. This morning, Alex was dragged out of court in handcuffs. Growing up Middle Eastern in Vermont meant my nicknames exclusively consisted of terrorist, Alibaba, and curry muncher. You see, I was the only Middle Eastern person all the way up until I graduated college, which also meant my mom was my best friend. The second she realized I was being bullied, she completely stopped cooking meals from our hometown to avoid the smell sticking to my clothes. And as if this wasn't enough, she also made an effort to have more American friends so that our accents would naturally become whiter. None of her methods worked, but it at least made me feel less alone. So when I was 23 and still hadn't had my first kiss, my mom insisted on helping me. She told me there was a nice Arab man she had met who was single and handsome. For those who don't know, in my culture, you don't go on dates. Instead, you immediately become engaged and move in together. And until you get married, a parent, in this case my mom, moves in with you to make sure there is no premarital intercourse. And I guess loneliness really does make you do crazy things, because somehow, in some way, I found myself agreeing. At first, it seemed like a good decision. He'd tuck me in every night and constantly praise me for how beautiful I was. But most importantly, he treated my mom like a queen. It only took 2 days before she approved of him. And the second she did, I realized it was all a facade. One time, I surprised him with a home-cooked dinner when he got home. "Ugh," he remarked with a contorted face. "Not great, but it's okay. You'll improve when you're a wife." But instead of listening to my gut feeling, I tried harder to win his approval. I started waking up 2 hours early, even on weekdays, to clean the entire house top to bottom. I bought clothes in the color he always said looked nice on me. I even started going to the gym and tried to shed a few pounds, but things never got better. If anything, they got worse. So much so that I finally caved and did the most insane thing I could have ever done. I tried to communicate with Alex. "Babe, sometimes I just feel a little underappreciated." "Underappreciated?" My mom barged into the room. "Do you know what your father did the first time I cooked him dinner? He threw his plate across the room because I made him a meal he didn't like." They then started discussing, right in front of me, about how ungrateful and unappreciative I was. Guilt flooded my body, and in that moment, I genuinely believed I was the worst fiancé to ever exist. But one day, after weeks of attempting to win over Alex's love, he finally admitted something was missing in our relationship. "Baby, as we approach marriage, I think it's time for you to quit your job." I stared at him blankly. He knew my career was everything to me, and I guess he noticed my sheepishness because that's when he clarified what he meant. A real wife focuses on home, not chasing useless ambitions. My throat clamped shut. If I knew things would turn out this way, I would have just stayed lonely. The air was thick with unease. That's when I finally spoke. "I don't think things are gonna work out between us." Again, I was interrupted, but this time it was by Alex's laughter. A deep belly, earth-shattering roar. "No wonder you've been single for so long. No man with options would ever pick you." He was practically rolling on the floor, pointing at me and laughing. I didn't say anything, just silently retreated to my bedroom. The next day, to my surprise, I woke up to breakfast in bed. Alex apologized profusely for how he acted and told me he was going to do better. His words lit up a spark in my stomach. So convincing me to take a few days off work to spend more time with him was a walk in the park. He had created a perfect distraction. Every day we were going on dates that truly felt magical, and I felt like a Disney princess. I guess that's the thing with love bombing. You never realize it's happening until afterwards. At the end of the few days, I wanted to go back to work with a bang. So I organized all my files and made sure everything was perfectly set up for me to impress everyone. But that didn't happen. It started with my key card not working at the door. Shock flooded my system, but I tried to console myself as security walked me up the stairs. There, I was met with Linda, the head of HR, and my boss. I thought they were going to scold me for taking a few days off, but instead, as I sat in the office, they pushed a stack of papers towards me. I flicked through them. My hands were trembling. I thought I was actually going to vomit. Someone had forwarded every confidential email in my inbox to every member of the company, the accounting team, the cleaners, the other paralegals, everyone. I tried to make my case, but they didn't care. And as I walked down the stairs carrying a box of my belongings, rage clawed at my throat. I knew Alex was behind this, but through my anger, I saw clarity. I knew he was just days away from proposing to me, and I knew if I said yes, then I could ruin his life, from the inside out. I took a deep breath and forced myself to calm down. If I confronted him now, he'd deny everything. I needed proof, and I needed a plan. I stopped at a coffee shop before heading home, needing time to think. I couldn't let Alex or my mom see how upset I was. I needed to pretend everything was fine while I figured out what to do next. After 2 large much coffees and some frantic Googling about email hacking, I headed home with a fake smile plastered on my face. I'd tell them I got sent home early because of a plumbing issue at the office. It would buy me time. When I got to the apartment, Alex was there, which was weird because he should have been at work. He looked surprised to see me, then quickly composed his face into concern. "Baby, what are you doing home so early?" he asked, coming over to take my box. "What's all this?" I forced a laugh. "Plumbing issue at the office. They sent everyone home and told us to grab anything we might need for the next few days. They're not sure when it'll be fixed." He nodded, but something in his eyes looked calculating. "That's too bad. But hey, more time for us, right?" My mom came out of her room, equally surprised to see me. I repeated the plumbing story, and she seemed to buy it, immediately offering to make me lunch. As she bustled around the kitchen, Alex helped me carry my box to the bedroom. "Weird timing with the plumbing," he said casually, "especially after your sick days." I shrugged. "Just bad luck, I guess." He nodded, then his phone buzzed. He checked it, and a small smile played at his lips before he quickly hid it. "Work stuff," he explained. "Actually, I should head in. Some crisis with a project. Will you be okay here with your mom?" I nodded, relieved he was leaving. "Of course. Go save the day." The second he was gone, I started searching the apartment. I had no idea what I was looking for, evidence of him hacking my email, some clue to his motives, but I knew I needed something. I started with his laptop, but it was password protected. His desk drawers were locked. His closet contained nothing suspicious, just neatly organized clothes and shoes. I was about to give up when I noticed his nightstand drawer was slightly open. Inside was a small notebook. I flipped through it, finding mostly work notes and to-do lists. But near the back, I found something strange. A list of names, all women, with dates next to them. Some had check marks, others had X's. My name was at the bottom, with yesterday's date and a question mark. What the hell was this? Some kind of sick scorecard? I took photos of every page with my phone, then carefully replaced the notebook exactly as I'd found it. My mom called me for lunch, and I spent the next hour pretending everything was normal while my mind raced. After we ate, I told her I was tired and needed a nap. Once in my room, I locked the door and pulled out my phone. I started Googling Alex's name, adding keywords like scam and fraud. Nothing came up. I tried searching some of the women's names from his notebook, but without last names, it was useless. I was hitting dead ends everywhere. Then I remembered something. Alex had mentioned growing up in Boston before his family moved here. On a hunch, I searched his name plus Boston and lawsuit. Bingo. A small article from 3 years ago about a harassment suit filed against him by a former fiancé. The case had been settled out of court. Details undisclosed. The woman's name matched one from his notebook, with an X beside it. I kept digging. Another article, this one from a community paper in New Hampshire, mentioned him briefly as the ex-fiancé of a woman who had experienced financial fraud. Her name was also in the notebook, also with an X. My hands were shaking as I kept searching. There wasn't much. These weren't big news stories, but I found enough to piece together a pattern. Alex targeted women, usually from immigrant communities, usually with limited dating experience. He'd charm them, move in quickly, then systematically isolate them from their support systems. Sometimes he'd drain their bank accounts. Sometimes he'd get them fired. Sometimes he'd just disappear with their valuables. And he always had a female accomplice, an older woman who posed as his relative, sometimes a mother, sometimes an aunt, who would gain the victim's trust and validate his behavior. My blood ran cold. My mom. Was she really my mom? No, that was crazy. I'd known my mom my whole life. She wasn't some scam artist. But then, why was she so quick to defend Alex's behavior? Why did she push me toward him despite the red flags? Was she somehow involved? I heard the front door open and quickly closed my browser. Alex's voice drifted down the hallway, followed by my mom's laughter. I took a deep breath and tried to calm my racing heart. I needed to act normal while I figured out what to do. For the next few days, I played the perfect fiancé. I smiled at Alex's jokes, cooked his favorite meals, and pretended to be upset about the plumbing issues at work that kept getting extended. Meanwhile, I was gathering information. I set up a hidden camera in our living room using an old phone. I recorded conversations. I took screenshots of text messages when he left his phone unattended. And I watched my mom carefully. She seemed genuinely affectionate with me, the same mom I'd always known. But with Alex, there was something performative about their interactions, like they were putting on a show for my benefit. On the 4th day after losing my job, Alex announced he was taking us out to a fancy dinner. "To cheer you up about work," he explained, "and to celebrate something special." This was it. He was going to propose. I could feel it. I spent extra time getting ready, making sure I looked perfect in the dress he'd bought me the previous week. As I applied my makeup, I caught my mom watching me from the doorway, a strange expression on her face. "You look beautiful," she said softly. "Are you excited for tonight?" I forced a smile. "Very. Do you think he's going to propose?" Something flickered in her eyes. Concern? Guilt? I think so. He asked for my blessing yesterday. My heart sank. So she was definitely in on it. Whatever it was. "And you gave it?" I asked, keeping my voice light. She hesitated, then nodded. "Of course. He's a good man." I turned back to the mirror, unable to look at her anymore. Right. A good man. The restaurant was the fanciest place I'd ever been to. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, waiters in bow ties. Alex ordered champagne as soon as we sat sat down, then proceeded to order for all of us without asking what we wanted. My mom beamed with approval at his take-charge attitude. Throughout dinner, I watched them interact. There was something off about it. Too rehearsed, too perfect. They kept exchanging glances when they thought I wasn't looking. Once, when I went to the bathroom, I lingered near our table on my return and overheard Alex say something about after tonight and my mom nodding seriously. By dessert, my nerves were shot. Alex had been building up to something all evening, dropping hints about our future and making things official. When the waiter brought our desserts, there was a small velvet box next to my chocolate cake. Alex reached across the table and took my hand. I know we haven't known each other long, but when you know, you know. You're everything I've been looking for. He got down on one knee beside the table. Several diners turned to watch, smiling at what they thought was a romantic moment. Will you marry me? He asked, opening the box to reveal a diamond ring that looked expensive but somehow cheap at the same time. I stared at the ring, then at his expectant face, then at my mom, who was dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. This was the moment. I could say yes and continue with my plan to gather evidence and expose him, or I could end it now. Before I answer, I said carefully, I have a question. Alex's smile faltered slightly. Of course, baby. Anything. I took a deep breath. Did you hack my work email and get me fired? The restaurant seemed to go silent around us. Alex's face went through several expressions: surprise, confusion, then anger, before settling on hurt innocence. What? Why would you ask that? Of course not. He looked genuinely shocked, and for a moment I doubted myself. Is that what happened to your job? Why would you think I'd do something like that? Because the emails were sent from my apartment while I was out with you, I said evenly. And because I found your little notebook with all the women's names, and the articles about your previous fiancés. Alex's face hardened. He stood up, no longer the hurt fiancé, but something colder, more calculating. You've been snooping through my things? You've been systematically destroying my life, I countered. What was next? Draining my bank account? Stealing my identity? Or just disappearing with my mom's jewelry like you did with Sarah in Boston? At the mention of Sarah, something dangerous flashed in his eyes. He glanced at my mom, who looked genuinely confused. Alex, what is she talking about? My mom asked, her voice small. He ignored her, focusing on me. You don't know what you're talking about. You're just paranoid because you got fired, probably for your own incompetence. I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table. I have recordings of you on my computer, of you talking to someone on the phone about the plan. Want me to play them for everyone here? I was bluffing. The recordings weren't that explicit, but Alex didn't know that. His face paled slightly. You're crazy, he hissed, but there was fear behind his eyes now. This is why no one wanted you before me. This paranoia. My mom was looking between us, confusion giving way to something else, anger, but I couldn't tell who it was directed at. Mom, I said, not taking my eyes off Alex, did you know about this? Are you part of it? Part of what? She asked, her voice trembling. What is happening? Alex suddenly grabbed the ring box and shoved it in his pocket. This was a mistake. You're not ready for marriage. You need help. He threw some cash on the table and stormed out, leaving me and my mom sitting in stunned silence as the other diners pretended not to stare. What just happened? My mom whispered, tears in her eyes. What were you talking about? Those women. I studied her face, looking for signs of deception. Either she was the best actress in the world, or she genuinely had no idea. Mom, I think Alex is a con artist, I said quietly. I think he's done this before to other women, and I think he just tried to do it to us. Her face crumpled, but he was so perfect, so respectful. He treated us both so well. At first, I reminded her, until you approved of him. Then he changed. Recognition dawned in her eyes. The night I told him I approved, he was different the very next day. We sat there in the restaurant, piecing it together. How he'd love-bombed me, then started the subtle put-downs. How he'd isolated me from my job. How he'd been positioning himself to take control of my finances. We need to go home and pack, I said finally. He has keys to our apartment. It's not safe. My mom nodded, suddenly looking older and very tired. Where will we go? I had no idea. With no job, limited savings, and no close friends nearby, our options were limited. But we had to get away from Alex before he came back, possibly angry and definitely dangerous. As we left the restaurant, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You'll regret this. Nobody rejects me. I showed it to my mom, whose face hardened with determination. Let him try something, she said with unexpected fierceness. No one threatens my daughter. In that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that my mom wasn't involved in Alex's scheme. She was just a mother who wanted her daughter to be happy, who had been taken in by a professional manipulator. We took a taxi back to the apartment, half expecting to find Alex waiting for us, but the place was empty. We packed quickly, taking only what we could carry in a few suitcases. As my mom gathered her things, I noticed her hands were shaking. I'm so sorry, she whispered. This is all my fault. I pushed you toward him. I hugged her tightly. It's not your fault. He fooled both of us. As we were about to leave, there was a knock at the door. We froze, looking at each other in panic. Had Alex come back? Was he angry? Violent? I peered through the peephole, then let out a breath of relief. It wasn't Alex. It was a woman I'd never seen before. Middle-aged, well-dressed, with a serious expression. Can I help you? I asked cautiously as I opened the door. Are you the fiancé of Alex Mejia? Mahir? She asked. I nodded slowly. Ex-fiancé as of about an hour ago. Why? She held up a badge. Detective Jessica Rivera. I've been tracking Mr. Mahir for some time. May I come in? I let Detective Rivera in, my hands still shaking from everything that had just happened. My mom looked like she'd seen a ghost, clutching her suitcase like it might protect her somehow. You're packing, Detective Rivera noted, glancing at our suitcases. Smart move. How did you find us? I asked, still standing by the door in case we needed to make a quick exit. I've been monitoring Alex's movements for weeks, she explained, taking a seat on our couch without waiting for an invitation. When he started spending time at this address, I ran background checks on the residents, found out he had a new potential victim. My stomach dropped. Victim? Detective Rivera pulled out a tablet and swiped through some photos. She turned it toward us, showing Alex with different women. In each photo, he looked slightly different, sometimes with a beard, sometimes with glasses, once with lighter hair. Alexander Mahir also goes by Alex Mahmoud, Ali Mahfouz, and about 5 other aliases. He's been running the same scam across 3 states for the past 4 years. My mom sat down heavily, her face pale. What exactly does he do? He targets women from immigrant communities, usually ones with limited dating experience and close family ties. He charms them, moves in quickly, then systematically isolates them. Sometimes he cleans out their bank accounts. Sometimes he steals their identities. Sometimes he just takes family heirlooms and disappears. It was exactly what I'd pieced together from my research. Hearing it confirmed made me feel sick. And he just got away again, I said, thinking about how he'd stormed out of the restaurant. Detective Rivera smiled for the first time. Actually, no. We picked him up about 20 minutes ago trying to board a bus to Philadelphia. That's why I'm here. Relief flooded through me. So he's arrested? It's over? Not quite, she said, her smile fading. We need your help. Alex is good at covering his tracks. The women he targets are often too embarrassed to press charges, or the evidence is circumstantial. We need solid testimony and evidence to make charges stick. I thought about the recordings I'd made, the screenshots of his texts, the photos of his notebook. I have some stuff, I told her. Not sure if it's enough, but I've been collecting evidence. Detective Rivera looked impressed. Most people don't think to do that. They're too caught up in the emotional manipulation. I got suspicious when I lost my job, I explained. Someone hacked my work email and sent confidential information to everyone in the company. I'm pretty sure it was Alex, but I can't prove it. She nodded, making notes on her phone. That fits his pattern. He likes to destroy his victims' professional reputations, makes them more dependent on him. My mom, who had been quiet, suddenly spoke up. Was I part of his plan? Did he hire me or something? Her voice cracked on the last words. Detective Rivera looked confused. Hire you? Some of the articles I found mentioned he had a female accomplice, I explained. An older woman who posed as his relative. Understanding dawned on the detective's face. Ah, yes, that would be Fatima Nazari. She's his actual aunt. We arrested her last year but had to release her due to lack of evidence. She's currently under surveillance in Chicago. My mom let out a sob of relief. So I didn't. I hugged her tightly. No, Mom. You were just trying to help me find someone. You got conned too. Detective Rivera gave us a moment, then cleared her throat. I need to ask, did either of you give Alex access to your financial information? Bank accounts, credit cards, social security numbers? I shook my head. No, we weren't at that stage yet, though he was pushing for joint accounts after the engagement. Good. She nodded. That's usually his next step. You got out just in time. The detective stayed for another hour, taking our statements and collecting the evidence I'd gathered. She seemed particularly interested in the notebook with the women's names. This could help us identify other victims, she explained, carefully bagging it as evidence. Some of these women might not even know they were targeted. Before she left, Detective Rivera gave us her card and the address of a women's shelter where we could stay temporarily. It's secure, and they have experience with situations like yours. Alex might have accomplices we don't know about yet. After she left, my mom and I finished packing in silence. The reality of our situation was sinking in. We had nowhere to go, I had no job, and we'd just narrowly escaped being completely ruined by a professional con artist. I'm so sorry, my mom said again as we loaded our suitcases into a taxi. I just wanted you to be happy. I know, Mom, I said, squeezing her hand. It's not your fault. The women's shelter was basic, but clean. We got a small room with 2 twin beds and shared bathroom facilities down the hall. The staff was kind, not asking too many questions beyond what they needed to know for intake. They gave us toiletries, clean towels, and information about support services. That night, lying in the narrow bed, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying everything. How quickly Alex had charmed us, how effectively he'd manipulated us, how close we'd come to disaster. I kept thinking about my job too. Even if Alex went to jail, my professional reputation was destroyed. No law firm would hire me after that confidentiality breach. The next morning, I woke up to my phone buzzing with a text from Detective Rivera. Court hearing for preliminary charges today at 2 p.m. Your presence would be helpful but not required. I showed my mom, who immediately said we should go. I want to see his face when he realizes he didn't get away with it, she said firmly. We arrived at the courthouse early, nervous but determined. Detective Rivera met us outside and briefed us on what to expect. He's being charged with fraud, identity theft from previous cases, and harassment. Your evidence is helping build the case. The courtroom was mostly empty, just a few officials, another detective, and 3 women sitting together in the back. Detective Rivera nodded toward them. Other victims who came forward after we arrested him. When they brought Alex in, I almost didn't recognize him. Gone was the confident, charming man I'd known. He looked smaller somehow, his designer clothes replaced by an orange jumpsuit. When he saw me, his eyes narrowed with hatred. The hearing was brief. The judge denied bail, citing flight risk and the pattern of targeting vulnerable women. As they led Alex away, he looked back at me with such venom that I instinctively stepped closer to my mom. He can't hurt you anymore, Detective Rivera assured us. With the evidence we have, plus testimony from multiple victims, he's looking at serious time. After the hearing, the other women approached us. One of them, a woman about my age named Layla, hugged me tightly. Thank you for collecting evidence, she whispered. I was too scared to do that. We ended up going for coffee with them, sharing our stories. The similarities were striking. All of us from immigrant backgrounds, all relatively inexperienced with dating, all targeted in almost identical ways. By the time we parted, we'd exchanged numbers and promised to stay in touch. It helps to know I wasn't the only one who fell for it, Layla said as we said goodbye. Makes me feel less stupid. We're not stupid, I told her firmly. He's just really good at what he does. Back at the shelter, I started job hunting. It was discouraging. My resume had a glaring hole where my legal job should be, and I couldn't exactly explain why I'd left. After a week of rejections, I was starting to panic about our future. Then I got a call from Linda, my former HR manager. We've been contacted by Detective Rivera, she said without preamble. She explained the situation with your fiancé. I held my breath, not daring to hope. The partners have discussed it, and in light of the circumstances, we'd like to offer you your job back. I nearly dropped the phone. Seriously? Even after the confidentiality breach? The detective provided evidence that you were not responsible, Linda explained. And frankly, we're reviewing our cybersecurity protocols. What happened shouldn't have been possible, regardless of who had access to your computer. I accepted immediately, relief washing over me. It wouldn't be easy going back. I'd have to rebuild trust with colleagues who'd seen all those private emails, but it was a chance to reclaim my life. That night, my mom and I celebrated with takeout in our tiny shelter room. We'll find a new apartment soon, I promised her. Somewhere with better security. She nodded but seemed distracted. I've been thinking, she said slowly. Maybe I should move back to Vermont. I stared at her in surprise. What? Why? I came here to help you start your adult life, she explained. But I think maybe I've been too involved, too controlling. Mom, no, let me finish, she said gently. I pushed you toward Alex because I was worried about you being alone. I didn't trust that you could find happiness on your own terms. That was wrong of me. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to protest, to tell her she was being ridiculous. But another part recognized the truth in her words. I'm not abandoning you, she continued, seeing my expression. I'll just be a few hours away. You can visit anytime. But I think we both need some space to figure out who we are. 2 months later, I helped my mom move back to our old town in Vermont. She found a small apartment near some friends from her old job and seemed genuinely excited about reconnecting with them. As for me, I found a studio apartment with excellent security in a building where several young professionals lived. It was the first time I'd ever lived completely alone. The first few nights were strange. I kept expecting to hear my mom moving around in the next room, or to smell her cooking in the morning. But gradually, I settled into a routine of my own making. I decorated my apartment exactly how I wanted it. I cooked whatever I felt like eating. I stayed up late reading without anyone commenting on the light under my door. Work was challenging at first. Some colleagues were awkward around me, clearly remembering the private emails they'd seen, but most were supportive once they understood what had happened. My boss even assigned me to more complex cases, saying he was impressed by my resilience. 3 months after Alex's arrest, I got another call from Detective Rivera. Thought you'd want to know? He took a plea deal. 8 years, with possibility of parole after 5. That's it? I asked, disappointed. Just 8 years for ruining so many lives? It's better than nothing, she said pragmatically. And his record will follow him forever now. It'll be much harder for him to con women in the future. She was right, of course, but it still felt inadequate. Alex had cost me my job, temporarily, my home, my sense of security, and nearly destroyed my relationship with my mom. 8 years seemed like a small price to pay, but I couldn't dwell on it. I had a life to rebuild. 6 months after everything happened, I met someone at a bookstore. Not a setup, not an arranged introduction, just a random encounter over the last copy of a book we both wanted. His name was William, and he asked if I wanted to get coffee to discuss the book after I graciously let him have it. My first instinct was to say no. After Alex, the thought of dating anyone terrified me. But then I remembered something Layla had said during one of our support group meetings. If we let fear stop us from living, then he's still controlling us. So I said yes to coffee. Just coffee. Nothing more. We talked about books for 2 hours, and he didn't once comment on my my appearance or try to tell me what to order. When he asked for my number afterward, I gave it to him without the nod of anxiety I'd expected. We've been dating for 3 months now. It's slow, cautious, and completely on my terms. William knows about Alex, not every detail, but enough to understand why I sometimes get nervous or need reassurance. He's patient, never pushing for more than I'm ready to give. Last weekend, I visited my mom in Vermont. She's thriving there, reconnecting with old friends and even dating a nice widower from her apartment building. We cooked dinner together, traditional food from our homeland that filled the apartment with familiar spices and memories. "Are you happy?" she asked as we washed dishes together. I thought about my job, my apartment, my new friends from the support group, and yes, even William. "I'm getting there," I answered honestly. "One day at a time." She nodded, understanding. That's all any of us can do. Later that night, as I drove back to my apartment, I realized something important. Alex had tried to destroy me by exploiting what he saw as my greatest weakness, my inexperience with relationships, my cultural background, my close bond with my mom. But in surviving his manipulation, I discovered strengths I never knew I had. I'm not naive enough to think I'll never be vulnerable again. There are probably other Alexis out there, looking for their next victim, but now I know what to watch for. I know how to protect myself. And most importantly, I know that being alone isn't the worst thing that can happen to a person. Sometimes it's exactly what you need to figure out who you really are.